Hey folks, this is Jake Davis with a top 5 video for you today. Oh, I forgot to do one thing. Happy Halloween! I forgot to do that at the intro. No, fuck this. Nah, I guess I'll do the video. I guess I'll do it. So I've been building up to this video for a couple of years, actually. Doing my, why did I put that on? Doing my top 5 best horror movies of the 70s, 80s, 90s, 2000s, and now getting into the 2010s. Now, the 2010s, I think, were a phenomenal decade for horror movies. Maybe genuinely one of the best ever. And that's not going down. Why is that not going down? So this is bright. Fuck you. Fuck it. So, it's Halloween. I've had a few. So fuck it. I just want to talk about my top 5 favorite horror films of the 2010s. And just to recap to you, my 70s favorite horror film is easily Texas Chainsaw. 80s at the time, I had said Reanimator, and Reanimator is a masterpiece, no doubt. But after revisiting both films and several other horror movies from the 80s, I don't know. I'd probably lean a little bit more towards The Thing. And also, I feel bad about not including Hellraiser in my top 5. 90s, perfect. Scream, of course. Don't fuck with me, don't come at me. It's Scream. Scream's one of my favorite movies, much less one of my favorite horror movies. And then there's 2010s, the 2000s, which I decided to go with Joyride as my favorite horror movie of the 2000s. Maybe I should have showed a little bit more love towards Saw. But to be honest with you, I think the 2000s is just a shit decade for horror. It's just an absolute garbage decade for horror movies. That is not the case with the 2010s. This is a phenomenal decade for horror movies, y'all. So let's get into it. My number 5 is Better Watch Out from 2015. The whole story of this film, starring Olivia DeJonge and I think Luke Miller is the kid's name, maybe? I don't know. Whole story of this film is on Christmas Eve, right before she's about to leave town to go off to college. A young woman takes one last babysitting job with a kid she's babysitted for years when there's a home invader lurking around outside the house. I can't really tell you anything more. I'm not going to give you spoilers about any of these movies in this video. But things escalate, and the more things escalate, the more interesting and just fucking great the movie gets. Better Watch Out. And also, with Better Watch Out, I'm breaking my usual tradition with these top 5s, because 70s, 80s, 90s, previous decades, I always stuck to theatrically released movies. But with the 2011s, it's, I don't know, just the consumption of film changed. So it kind of felt like we're dealing with a I don't know, a genre like horror. It didn't feel fair to include streaming films. And maybe this could be something when I go back, I could go back and look at my 90s films about home release movies. And that could very much possibly alter things, because there's some good stuff in that decade. But Better Watch Out is a great horror movie with magnificent performances and a brilliant escalation of its story and its production. It's excellent work. Excellent work all around. Number 4, and I'm honestly surprised it's this low, The Cabin in the Woods from 2012, directed by Drew Goddard, starring oh my god, what's her name? Kristen Connolly, I think. Chris Hemsworth, Ron Kranz, Richard Jenkins, Brad Woodford, whatever the fuck his name is. The guy from Ally McBeal. Sigourney Weaver, other people. And the Pink Power Ranger. The blonde one, not Amy Jo Johnson. This is just a magnificently brilliant movie. It is a horror movie made for jaded horror movie fans. It's like the movie sets itself up and presents itself as like the most predictable and generic horror movie you've ever fucking seen. And then it unfolds into this elaborate, insane madhouse of greatness. Dude, Cabin in the Woods is something special, something to treasure, frankly, in the world of horror movies. And I kind of don't even want to say more about it than that, because I don't think I've ever... That's why I reviewed it before I started doing this. Of course, I started doing this in... movie came out 10 years ago, and I started doing this in 2018. But yeah, man, wow. The Cabin in the Woods is greatness. And this is not... Okay, I'm gonna keep moving forward. Number 3. Insidious. Insidious, to quote a stand-up comedian, is an irresponsibly scary horror film. From 2011, directed by James Wan. And, I could have picked, flipped a coin, I guess, or some people could have flipped a coin for what would have been the James Wan film. I kind of wanted to have a tie here for Insidious and The Conjuring, but no, it's really Insidious for me. Basically the story here is that a family has a son who's being terrorized by creatures in his sleep, and they move, but it follows him. So it's like the situation of they straight up say in the movie, it's your child who is cursed, not the house that's haunted. And of course, it opened up this. It made Lin Shaye, after decades working in horror movies, finally had this performance, this character that made her someone that everyone really, really appreciated and praised in the genre, in the field. And that's great. But, I mean, Rose Byrne's performance, Patrick Wilson's performance, and even the first sequel. I don't care. I mean, I didn't hate Insidious 3 or 4, but I thought the sequel was really fucking good. Pause. Am I recording? Yes, okay. So let's wrap this up. Number 2, The Babadook. The Babadook to me was a fascinating study on grief, loathing, hate, remorse, all these dark themes, you know what I mean? And then there's the overall payoff for the movie. I mean, spoilers here. What ultimately ends is the kid is more or less magic, and he has found a way to kind of capture this creature in their home. He's made it their pet. I would love to see kind of While the Cat's Away, a sequel to The Babadook. I don't want him to actually make this movie, but the fuck just happened? My screen froze. I hope that doesn't show up on the video. But The Babadook was a fascinating, brilliant film that should have received Oscar nominations for Best Actress, probably Best Director, maybe Best Picture, since we had 10 of these fucking things to deal with. And how about Best Sound? It may have the single most unnerving sound design I've ever experienced in a horror film, which is really saying something. I'll pause again just real quick. And yes, my number one is It from 2017. Stephen King's It has always been a very personal story to me. What it really is ultimately at the core of it that makes it so special to me is, despite how scary and interesting and cool a villain Pennywise is, what makes the story resonate with me personally so much is that at its core, it's not about booze and scares and body counts. It's about friendship, loyalty, love. And yeah, it's just, it is something special to me. And, uh, doing the kid story as its own movie, setting the grown-up stuff up as a sequel, kind of proved my sister right years ago when she said that, no one really cares about the grown-up shit in it. You could just do the whole movie with just the kids and people would be fine with just that. And I figured, no, but that's only half the story, this, that. But I was wrong. Yes, it's nice to get the whole story, sure. But the best parts of it are in part one. And then there's what makes that movie really work. Since it's my number one horror film of the decade, it's not just a nostalgia thing. Let's talk about what's great about the movie, which, by the way, yeah. Skarsgård, amazing performance. One of, if not the greatest performance of a horror movie villain in movie history. He's genuinely, in my opinion, up there with Frederick March, Bela Lugosi, Robert Englund, all of them. It might be the guy. It's an amazing performance. When they first announced they were going to do the movie, I had said on Facebook publicly that I thought Ewan McGregor would be a good choice for Pennywise. Because I felt he had that kind of... He could have made that role work, but at the same time, I now look back at realizing that I was just looking for someone who was similar to Tim Curry. You know what I mean? Bill Skarsgård brought something completely different and new to the role. And inhuman, which is the most important thing to point out. I don't think it, and for that matter, The Babadook, and even Insidious, frankly, I don't think these movies are just the best horror films of that decade, of the 2010s. But I would put these movies up against films of any era as some of the best horror movies ever made. This was a phenomenal, a magnificent, and triumphant decade for horror films. One that comes around very, very rarely. The 30s were great for horror. The 80s were great for horror. The 2010s were great for horror. And, in my lifetime, at least being aware and cognitive of the films around me and shit like that, to me, the 90s were about crime movies. The 2000s were a golden age of comedy. But the 2010s belong to the shadows and the scary people. Anyhow, I hope y'all have a happy Halloween and enjoyed my video. And also, oh fuck her. Remember to remember. Okay, I ain't gonna do it. I'm Jake Davis. I'll catch you on the fly. Am I still recording?